In the spring of 2016, I was studying for my entrance exams to get into a university, or to a college for you Americans, and considering how much I had to read the material, I still remember its subject to this day. It was about the difference between the waterfall method and the agile method, both of which can be used as an analog for what this video will be about. Before jumping into it, waterfall method and agile method are different methods used in project management of software development, and the main difference between the two is that waterfall projects are completed sequentially, as in step by step towards a planned goal, whereas agile projects are completed iterationally in cycles, or in layman's terms, as you go forward towards an unknown destination. Both methods have their strengths and weaknesses, to which I will get into later, and you will understand why when I get to it. I'll just say for now that they are better used together, not separately. Anyway, Titans is a live action television series based on Marv Wolfman's and George Perez's The New Teen Titans comic book run, or more of a fraction of it. It had been in the development since 2014, originally meant for TNT, who dropped it in 2016, and then it entered redevelopment in 2017 by Akiva Goldsman, Jeff Johns, and Greg Berlanti. Those three managed to get it premiered in 2018 on the now defunct DC Universe streaming service. I never got the chance to subscribe to it because the people in charge never made it available outside of the United States, where I do not live in. So I had to wait until spring of 2019 for Netflix to release the first season and 2020 for season 2. Titans is supposed to follow the youngish team of superhero sidekicks by actors with a seriously too wide age gaps between some of them. Like I said, this show was supposed to be based on the team called Teen Titans, but since only one of the actors was a teenager when cast to her role, the teen part was taken out of the show's name. And even when there is a later comic book series called Titans, that series context for it does not work in the TV show. The premise for this first season is about the eponymous team coming together against an evil demon antagonist for all 11 episodes of it. The entire season. Just wait, I'll get to it. The cast for this first season included Brenton Thwaites as Dick Grayson, aka Robin, Anna Diop as Coriander, aka Starfire, Tegan Croft as Rachel Roth, aka Raven, and Ryan Potter as Garfield Logan, aka Beast Boy, in the main roles. Later, they are joined by Curran Walters as Jason Todd, Connor Leslie as Donna Troy, Minka Kelly as Dawn Granger, aka Dove, and Alan Richson as Hank Hall, aka Hawk. And it takes the entire first season for them to get together as the team they are supposed to be. Before I'm making a rushed summary, I just want to make clear that the appearances of the actors and characters is something I won't be focusing on in this video. Other people before me have already done that, so I won't be repeating what they have had to say. From my point of view, the writing and narrative are what make or break a television show's premise, and so keep the audience's interest on it. Appearances work like jump scares in bad horror movies, meaning that you will only pay attention to them on the first glance, and afterwards won't care anymore, unless they appear along with something that is worth talking about. And that is why the quality of Robin's costume, what Starfire is shown wearing, or the green tinted animals that Beast Boy can turn into ultimately end up meaning nothing in the end. Okay, and now onto the summary. I will be skimming through a lot, but I'm only doing so because these episodes seem to have a single focus with a weak connection to each other. So I will only focus on the most important details. The first episode, Titans, written by the show's main three developers, circled around the not yet former Robin, aka Dick Grayson, meeting the underage teenager Rachel Roth and taking her into his protection after learning that she is the daughter of a demon worshipped by a bunch of fanatics. And meanwhile, this woman is meant to be Starfire, who I'll be calling Cory, wakes up with an amnesia, and Beast Boy, who I will be calling Gar, is shown at the end as a tiger. The second episode, Hawk and Dove, is a time wasting detour as Dick wants to dump Rachel to the title characters. But the nuclear family stops that by taking Rachel, and while doing that, Dove is thrown off the roof and ends up in the hospital. Cory manages to catch up with the nuclear family in episode 3, Origins, and save Rachel from them, with Dick catching up with them at a covenant, while also contemplating over his adoption by Bruce Wayne. Somewhere in the middle, Gar has a brief cameo, and Cory recalls having been researching various doomsday prophecies concerning the advent of an apocalyptic raven. Rachel's demon self causes an explosion, and she escapes from the Covenant. The fourth episode is a backdoor pilot to the Doom Patrol series, another DC Universe streaming service original show that is a HBO Max show by now. Gar meets up with Rachel and brings her to the Doom Manor to meet the others who live there. Long story short, Rachel's demon half comes out again when Dick and Cory follow her and Gar to the Doom Manor. They calm Rachel down and leave together with Gar coming with them, so that Cyborg can take his place in the Doom Patrol TV series. We are now on episode 5, Together, where the team is finally brought together, but before they can get ready to fight the incoming nuclear family, the youngest need to connect while the eldest have sex. Because this show needs to look mature and deep. Cory, Gar, and Rachel are bad at fighting the villains, but Dick manages to strategically neutralize them one by one as Robin because he was trained by Batman. Now that there are no secrets between the team, Dick leaves them to look after the nuclear family and goes after their creator, who kills them with a remote detonator and tries to kamikaze Dick, but he is saved by Jason Todd, the new Robin. His introduction leads us to episode 6, which is what I would call a side quest, because the main plot we have been following so far is put on a hold. So far, this 11 episodes long first season, which by the way got its final 12th episode cannibalized into second season's premiere, and so far, the Titans have not properly been brought together as a team. Sure, they are together, but they are supposed to be the focus as a working team, not as individuals like this. Out of the main 4 characters given attention so far, Dick and Rachel were the main point of view characters in the first 3 episodes, while Cory more or less stood by, while episode 4 had Rachel share her focus with Gar, and episode 5 tried to share the focus on everyone equally. By that logic, if the team's individual members are supposed to be given spotlight in these episodes, then shouldn't the focus be given now to Cory to develop her character instead of Dick and Jason? Jason is only here for this episode, which is going on about Dick's past with his parents' killer, and it ultimately ends up serving nothing to the main plot, and its cliffhanger only ends up leading to episode 7, The Asylum. Nuclear Family's creator leads the 4 Titans to an abandoned asylum, where the focus is attempted to be shared on everyone as they try to find Rachel's mother, Angela, and then Cory burns down the place with everyone else left in there. So now they are not only arsonists, but also murderers. And unlike the end resulted casualties in the Batmobile chase and the warehouse scene in Batman v Superman Dawn of Justice, Rachel kills the Nuclear Family's creator, while Gar kills an asylum doctor, and as I just said, Cory burns down the asylum. These are first and second degree murders with clear intent. Also, Dick burns his Robin costume along with the asylum because this show wants to be edgy on why he is not working with Batman anymore. And I say that as someone who doesn't like the word edgy because it has been overused so much for so long as I can remember that it barely means anything to me anymore. Not just the word edgy, but also the comparative themes in television shows, comic books, movies, and video games. See, the most commonly known occurrence of Dick Grayson leaving the mantle of Robin and stopping to work with Batman is from the new Batman Adventures cartoon episode Old Wounds, where he ends up being angry at Batman's grim and manipulative attitude while also keeping secrets. Old Wounds aired back in 1998, and the mainstream DC Comics universe continuity mimicked this in Nightwing issue 101 in 2005, where Batman literally fired Dick from being a Robin. Since these occasions made the breakup of Batman and Robin seem tragic and dramatic, it is the most recognized storytelling trope. But since Titans is meant for mature audiences, they decided to copy the old Woods route, and apparently in episode 1, they had Dick have the same hateful view of Batman to the point where they had to reshoot Dick's first scene as Robin to have him say "fuck Batman" in it. That is not only edgy, but making an effort to be edgy, and also a good example of how the agile method can be used for the worse to make something up as you go on. And by the way, the original version of how Dick stopped working as Robin with Batman was done as a mutual agreement between him and Bruce, where they left each other in good terms, deciding to remain as an adopted father and adopted son. There was no bad blood left between them. Dick was somewhat grumpy when he and the Titans teamed up with Batman and the Outsiders, but regardless, they were left in good terms. Episode 8 sees Dick leaving the others and deciding to go see his former Titans friend Donna Troy. But then he has to run back to them after Donna, who is Wonder Woman's sidekick and knows ancient languages, is able to translate some writings Corey had written down on her research from episode 3. While they do that and are on their way to Rachel's mom's house, Corey gets a flash of memory while being there and starts to strangle Rachel in front of her mom and Gar. Then episode 9 is a giant fuck you after that cliffhanger. There is a reason why I jumped over most of what happened in episode 2, because I might as well do it while covering this episode. Episode 9, titled Hank and Dawn, basically tells us how the two met and became a team/couple. His brother and her mom were both hit by the same truck. I don't know if I should laugh at that because it sounds so tragicomically funny when it's supposed to be a tragic shared experience for Hank and Dawn to get together. Jeff Johns, by the way, wrote this episode, and it also deals with Hawk and Dove hunting down a football coach who had sexually abused Hank when he was a child, and then they kill that coach before having sex because this is supposed to be for mature audiences. It's also probably why these versions of Hawk and Dove were portrayed as regular costumed vigilantes instead of as avatars for war and peace. Anyway, Dawn in the present day wakes up from the coma that the nuclear family put her in episode 2 and tells Hank that they need to find Jason Todd. I don't know where she got the idea to go find Jason, but it is implied via Rachel's flashing mirages in the reflective surfaces that she is trying to beg for help, which, considering her situation, is understandable, but I don't understand where the Jason Todd connection comes from. Episode 10, titled Coriander, is, despite its name, not focused on Cory very much. Dick and Donna arrive just in time to Rachel's mom's house and pull Cory from trying to choke Rachel. She then comes somewhat back to her senses and leads Dick and Donna to an abandoned warehouse holding her spaceship. Cory recalls her memory as being Coriander from the planet Tamaran and having been sent to Earth to kill Rachel before she can bring the destruction of both planets. Let me just say that Coriander in the comics does have a warrior training in her youth, along with living in servitude under Tamaran's enemies, and the reason why she came to Earth in the first place was to escape from the people who treated her as a slave. She was not sent here by anyone, she escaped here, and only by chance managed to come across the other Titans, while her relationship with Dick Grayson grew from the fact that he was the first human she kissed to learn the English language. Imagine how much more interesting Cory's character would have been if they had gone with this approach instead of sending her to kill a 14-year-old girl. I understand that the 2003 Teen Titans cartoon, which I missed watching while growing up, went with this characterization. So, what outside of having a Senegalese American actress in her role kept them from giving Starfire her comic book background as a former slave who escaped from captivity to become a hero with the Titans? As I said in my first Batwoman video, if it's not broken, then don't try to fix it! Anyway, Cory's mission statement reveals that Rachel is the daughter of Trigon, an interdimensional demon similar to the Scarlet King, and her mother Angela was like one of the SCP-231s, aka the Seven Brides of the Scarlet King. Rachel is meant to be both Trigon's access to our world and a mean to destroy him, which is why in episode 1 she was being pursued when Dick Took was forced to take her into his protection. Basically, Cory was sent to kill Rachel to keep Trigon from entering our world. Similar how the SCP Foundation has been trying to keep the Scarlet King from entering our world by performing Procedure 110 Montauk on SCP-231-7. That is the easier way to make sure that Trigon would never come here, while using Rachel to destroy Trigon upon his arrival includes all kinds of risks that are better and safer to avoid. So, kill the teenage girl and save the world. While Dick, Donna, and Cory are having this revelation, Gar suddenly gets a seizure and starts dying. Angela then convinces Rachel to call her father to help, and so Trigon is summoned, in human form first, and after healing Gar, Trigon and Angela decide to destroy the world once they have managed to turn Rachel to their side. In order to do that, they raise a magic barrier around their house, where that when they come find it, only Dick is able to get through. Which leads us to episode 11, titled Dick Grayson, which is basically one big mindfuck of living in an illusion that keeps getting worse to the person experiencing it. After Dick stepped through the magical barrier, Trigon put him inside a dream reality set 5 years in the future, where all the negative feelings he has about Batman are maxed out to over 9,000 to make him look like an irredeemable and one-dimensional monster. Dick then kills Batman in the illusion, and by doing that, allows Trigon to corrupt him to his cause. And that's it! That was the entire first season. As I said before, the 12th episode was cannibalized into being the season 2 premiere episode for some stupid haista paska reason. My suspicion is that due to the poor reception to the earlier episodes that were supposed to introduce these characters, Goldsman, Johns, and Berlanti, or whoever in the production cared anymore at this point, had lost their faith on the waterfall method's planned endpoint, pulled the season finale, and reworked it into season 2's premiere in order to fix what they didn't bother to set up. And see, unlike with Batwoman and the other CW shows, Titans is, or was, on a paid streaming service and DC Universe's debut original series. It needed to be a hit that would get people to pay for DC Universe, and the impression that Titans had given was not it. The characters introduced in Titans were not it. So, they ended up pulling the last episode, rewrote and reshot it, and made it the season 2 premiere. I'm not going to go over the second season, it deserves its own video, but since episode 12, titled Trigon, carries over from episode 11's cliffhanger, I will still cover it before getting to my final points. While Dick got himself corrupted by Trigon, Hank and Dawn go to find Jason from the empty Wayne Manor, and they all head to Rachel's mom's house. After Donna has dropped an unnecessary F-bomb about Jason being the new Robin for some stupid Vitun reason, they are all allowed to step inside the barrier. And just like with Dick, they are all placed inside illusions that keep getting worse to bring out the worst of them to be corrupted. It happens to all of them except for Gar, who manages to turn himself into a snake and slither his way to Rachel and then talk her out of the heartbreak and then have her talk Dick and the others out of the corruption after Trigon has stepped outside. And then Rachel goes outside to tell Trigon, "Hey dad, you suck!" before sucking him into the physical manifestation of the previous heartbreak, aka the jewel on her forehead. And that was what the first season was leading up to. This was also the last episode that had Jeff Johns and Akiva Goldsman involved in the writing, and after the premiere, Season 2 is written by a bunch of random people I am not going to focus on in this video. After Trigon is locked inside Rachel's forehead, Cory and Donna go have a girls' night out, and Dick decides to take Rachel, Gar, and Jason to San Francisco to start trying to be a team. But before that, he decides to go meet with Bruce, who is nothing like Dick had let the audience imagine him to be during the entire first season, and is played by Ian Glenn, a 58-year-old Scottishman who does minimal effort to hide his accent.
I hadn't heard from you for a while. When Alfred mentioned you wished to stop by, I'll admit, I was surprised. I see you made the news. Your old Titans friends. And some new ones too.
And actually, let's talk about Ian Glenn's Bruce Wayne for a while. He was cast back in the spring of 2019, meaning that he was not planned to appear in the original version of episode 12 when it was still supposed to be the season 1 finale. And how was he portrayed in episode 11? He was in the shadows, portrayed by two stunt actors, and had dark hair. I have a suspicion I was going to originally bring up in my Batwoman video, but this might as well be it. The last time we saw a live-action Batman in television was in 1996, played by Adam West. That TV show was on the Fox network, and after that, the next live-action Batman show that had Batman barely in it was Gotham, which was also a Fox network show. Prove me wrong down in the comments, I beg of you to prove me wrong. But I believe that the reason we have not gotten a proper Batman live action TV show is because DC and Warner Bros. Do not have the TV rights for Batman. Fox does. Fox has the rights to do Batman in live action for television, while DC and Warner Bros., along with their subsidiaries like the CW, DC Universe, and HBO Max, only have the rights for animation, video games, and movies, but not for television. Meaning that DC and Warner Bros. Would need to buy those rights back from Fox, which is currently owned by Disney. Meaning that Disney has TV rights for a property they can never use, while DC and WB have a character they cannot use for television. It's like one party has a video game but can't play the DLC, while the other party has the DLC but not the video game. And how likely is it that Disney would ever let Fox sell their TV rights to Batman back to DC and Warner Bros. Until that mess gets sorted out, DC and Warner Bros. Can only have Bruce Wayne as a supporting character in other shows, or have someone else pose as Bruce Wayne, but not directly have Batman and Bruce Wayne in their TV shows. Ei vittu mikä sotku! Anyway, Ian Glenn was cast just as an afterthought to give Dick a Bruce to talk with. And look at Ian Glenn! They didn't even bother to try make him look younger than 50. A simple hairpiece could have made him look 10 years younger and so more believable that he would still be active as Batman. They put less effort into Ian Glenn's Bruce Wayne coming across believably than they put into their Batsuit, and Ian Glenn put into hiding his Scottish accent. Also, if he is supposed to be this old, how old is Alfred, whom Dick called in episode 2, by the way? What was the original plan for this first season's finale, before it was changed into something that made even less sense than the previously established episodes? Anyway, as I said before, episode 12 ends with Dick taking Rachel, Gar, and Jason to San Francisco, which is where in the comics the Titans Tower does exist. But because this show was meant for mature audiences, the Titans Tower they set up shop in doesn't even remotely resemble the Titans Tower and ends up looking like a generic penthouse building. Hank and Dawn, they went to live on a farm, and Donna took Cory to have girl time. And I am not going to go over season 2 in this video yet. That is a future project. For the remainder of the video, I will be comparing Titans to comparable TV shows from my point of view. The first comparison I want to make is Young Justice because I never watched the 2003 Teen Titans cartoon, where Robin, Kid Flash, Aqualad, and Superboy started out as a four-member team in the first two-part episode, which was 44 minutes long, aka shorter than the Titans pilot episode. In that same two-parter, they were joined by Miss Martian, and a couple of episodes later by Artemis and a DH Satana. The first season of Young Justice had 26 22-minute long episodes, which divided by half equals 13 43 to 47-minute long episodes to compare with Titans. I do understand that as a cartoon, Young Justice had the advantage of having his background characters be drawn instead of needing them to be cast with stand-in actors. But since I'm going by the narrative comparisons, the narrative pacing of Young Justice managed to establish its eponymous team of superhero sidekicks in the time it takes two of them to meet each other in Titans and introduce additional members to their team by the time that Titans is still trying to find the dynamic to work together. Now, I am not an expert on how much different the script and screenplay writing process works between cartoons and live action series. So, this is my other comparison on how Titans could have also formatted itself. Sorjonen, or as it's known internationally, Border Town, is a Finnish crime drama and Nordic noir television series created by Mikko Oikkonen and starring Ville Virtanen as the title character, Detective Inspector Kari Sorjonen, who has Asperger's and exhibits traits of savantism. He is kind of like an everyman version of Sherlock Holmes without making a big number out of how smart he is like the BBC did. Kari Sorjonen is presented as a respected police officer in Finland's National Bureau of Investigations, or NBI for short, whose wife Pauliina has recently survived from a brain cancer. The first episode has Sorjonen take a new job leading the Serious Crime Unit, or SECRI, in the city of Lappeenranta in South Karelia to move his family there to a more peaceful life as he wants to spend more time with them. As you can see from this map, Lappeenranta is close to the border between Finland and Russia, which is why its show's international name is Border Town. Life in Lappeenranta is however not as peaceful as Sorjonen had planned as shown in the first season, which like Titan's first season also had 11 episodes, and unlike Titans, Sorjonen formatted its 11 episodes into 5 separate story arcs. The first arc, A Doll's House, was told in the first 3 near hour-long episodes, which makes every arc in Sorjonen feel like a series of interconnected movies. Before I go into them, I warn you, my audience, that unlike Titans, which tried to be a mature show for mature audiences, Sorjonen is actually a mature show for mature audiences without trying to be edgy. So the plot lines and subject matter explored in Sorjonen are actually taken seriously and are not treated for face value. Also, mild spoilers for the first season. Skip to this time code for when I'm done covering Sorjonen's first 4 story arcs. A Doll's House begins with Sorjonen and his family moving to Lappeenranta and leads to his first case dealing with an escort service transporting young women from Russia to Finland. One of those young women is Katja Jaakkola, daughter of a former Federal Security Service of Russian Federation (FSB) agent Lena Jaakkola, whose search for her daughter leads to her and Sorjonen's working together in finding the culprit behind the eponymous doll's house, and eventually to Sorjonen deciding to hire Lena to work for him in his group at Sekri. The second arc, Dragonflies, was told in the next 2 episodes, where a drug police is found dead in a hotel after having followed a case of drug smuggling. Lena has joined Sorjonen's group by this point, and they track a friend of a drug buyer followed by the deceased cop to a house party organized by the suspect. The friend/suspect spikes the guests' drinks, one of them being Sorjonen's daughter Janina, which made the closing of the case personal for Sorjonen. The third arc, The Fury, opens with the coroner that Sorjonen's group works with having his girlfriend end up in the hospital after foam comes out of her mouth, which is diagnosed as rabies. Since the coroner's girlfriend worked on the side as an escort, her clientele eventually gets investigated and leads to organized dogfights, which also had human combatants face off against rabid dogs. Lena and Katya also end up being kidnapped and brought there, where the actually badass mom is forced to protect her PTSD recovering daughter before Sorjonen's group and the Danish police manage to track and find them. The fourth arc, The Lady in the Lake, opens with a woman being found in a fishing trap in a lake, still alive but in a bad condition. While they work on solving her case, a politician's car is stolen and Sorjonen's boss forces him to prioritize on the stolen car instead. Both cases ultimately end up being connected into a larger case. Leading up to the final arc of the first season, I'm going to bring up how Sorjonen's Asperger and savantism also present him with a photographic memory, which helps him to piece together every case he works in and remember things that lead him to his conclusions. Again, kind of like an everyman version of Sherlock Holmes, without making a big number out of how smart he is like the BBC did with Benedict Cumberbatch, and having managed to become a family man. I'm bringing this up because in the background of each arc, there have been small things happening to the characters in Sorjonen's work and personal life. For example, his wife Paulina, who has been recovering from her brain cancer, started working at her former boyfriend's, aka the mayor's office, and their daughter Janina has been the new girl in town and befriending Lena's daughter Katya, which has been a drama on its own. Worried about his wife's cancer, Sorjonen abused his police power in one episode to ask hospital staff to look into her brain scans under the pretense that they were case related, while Janina found herself having a stalker that she tries to confront at the end of the fourth arc. This leads us to the final arc of the first season, Endgame, where Janina is found bloodied in the middle of Saimaa with a body identified as her stalker. As she does not remember what happened to her, Janina is accused of murder and transported into prison. This final arc is used to introduce a nemesis to Sorjonen, who orchestrated Janina's imprisonment after witnessing him abuse his police power earlier in the season. I won't spoil who this nemesis is for those of you who by now have found yourselves interested to go watch Sorjonen on your own. All three seasons are in Netflix in both Finnish and dubbed into English. But he is essentially a darker reflection of Sorjonen with his professional and personal background. And after the first season, he only appears in the second season by haunting Sorjonen's thoughts when he is stressed out in not managing to solve the case he's working at the time, before returning for the first and last arcs of the third season. And before going back to the Titans, Sorjonen has Alan Wake in it. Not the video game character, but the actor Ilkka Villi, whose likeness Remedy used to create Alan Wake. He doesn't look much like Wake in the first two seasons because of his buzz cut, but in the third season he has let his hair grow back enough to resemble the video game character. But anyway, if Titans, which premiered 2 years after Sorjonen, had followed Sorjonen's formatting by having the first season's 11 or 12 episodes divided into interconnected story arcs, then the focus between the four main characters could have been properly shared on all two or three-parter story arcs. That could have paced the first season so that the time it is presented to happen in wouldn't be squished into as short time as it was presented to be, like maybe a week's length. Have the first 3 episode arc properly bring the team together and set up shop, either in the Titan's Tower or on the road in a mobile home. Then have the next 3 arcs set as two-parters to explore and develop the main characters to have them grow as we watch them. Each story arc could have spanned out into days or a week's time, which could have helped the first season take place as long as it was coming out episode to episode on the DC Universe streaming service, which was maybe 2.5 months in the fall of 2018. And the possible time gaps between story arcs could have provided the narrative illusion of how long the Titans could have been working together and so make their team dynamic stronger and more believable. By the end of the season and the final story arc, the Titans could have come a properly long way, similar how the team in Young Justice had for their big challenge in facing off against Trigon. In the narrative terms, this is how Titans could have worked with the same cast and characters, but since I can't speak for the budgetary restraints, I cannot estimate how much it affected the writing process. As I previously brought up the quality of Dick's and Jason's Robin costumes, the limited amount of animals that Gar could turn into as Beast Boy, and now how Cory's powers didn't work at night or how she couldn't fly, I think the budget is self explanatory with those examples. But in the end, going back to my opening statement about the use of agile and waterfall methods, the first season of Titans was clearly executed with the usage of agile method, as the episodes were written by separate writers as ongoing cycles exemplified by the agile method. They likely used the waterfall method to set out an end goal for the first season to lead towards, but then they chickened out and changed everything at the last minute. And looking at the direction Titans took after episode 12, it looks like the writers are doing it episode by episode and are forced to cut corners when the budget runs out. I'll probably get into this more in a future video, but it is sufficient to say that the waterfall method has been completely abandoned as I don't see the second season's ending as anything else but an afterthought. Looking at how Jeff Johns is currently more focused on doing Stargirl, how Greg Berlanti seems to jump from one show to the other, and the latest news I heard about Akiva Goldsman is that he was in the writing staff of Star Trek Picard. So my final assumption is that Titans is now in the hands of a bunch of fan fiction writers who don't have continuity editors or know what their budget is until the last minute when it runs out and forces them to either pull the last episode or rewrite it into a time wasting letdown. Or is it? What do you think about what I have been talking about in this video? Do you agree or disagree? Write it down in the comments, like and share the video to the others you might deem interested in what I have had to say, and subscribe for other videos I will have coming in the future. And may your heart be your guiding key.